Everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Are the Lakers going to have to overpay for Daniel Gafford in a trade, or everyone else for that matter? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter where you get your podcasts, this one's always free and never behind paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers to the channel, Andy, all of whom are wondering how exactly the Lakers are going to get better this off season. One avenue is trades, but is the league going to punish them for their Luka Dončić deal? Other teams around the league, we'll get to that in a second. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So it starts in Dallas, Andy, where they have one of the perceived centers on the trade market, Daniel Gafford, a good shot blocker, good rebounder, good vertical threat. He's on the list of guys the Lakers might go after, and apparently the price is going to be steep.
I mean, what I think is really interesting about this, first of all, is before we drill down on the idea of Dallas and Daniel Gafford and the perceived politics that go along with the Lakers making another deal with Dallas, the optics, etc. As far as anything league-wide, like a tax being placed on the Lakers because of the Luka deal, I feel like that's really misplaced. Like, why are you not taxing the Mavericks? They're the one that actually made this deal. Every team around the league for the equivalent price of Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first, which, Anthony Davis is an elite center. Max Christie, I think, is an emerging 3-and-D player around the league, and those are increasingly some of the most valuable type of players that you can have. And a pick, like, I don't consider that nothing, but if you do, you actually should be taking this out on Dallas. And quite frankly, you should be redirecting that anger and energy towards trying to fleece Nico for whatever is left still on his roster. Like, why are you wasting your time punishing Rob Pelinka for having been given or offered a very good deal? Like, AD's still on this roster. You can probably get him for cheap from Dallas. If you like Gafford, get him for something good. Hell, you might be able to get Cooper Flagg. Like, why are you wasting your time punishing the Lakers? I'm just saying, my bias aside, that doesn't actually make any sense.
There is a certain lack of logic to it. This notion of a Lakers tax is nothing new. It's been revived over the weekend. Jake Weinbach from NBA reporters, worked for a variety of outlets. He tweeted out that the Lakers were, the league executives are angry that the Lakers were handed a gift, and if the Lakers engage in trade talks, they're going to be made to pay a little extra. Like, I certainly don't buy any sort of league-wide collusion against the Lakers in that way. I do think there's a possibility, though. The Lakers tax, to me, isn't so much that teams are unwilling to deal with the Lakers or literally insist on extra because, hey, man, you're the Lakers. You got to pay the Lakers tax. I do think if there's any truth to it at all, and conceptually it's stupid, teams should make whatever deal they feel improves their team. Like, if you think you can trade with the Lakers and get better, do it. But I think there is the possibility always for greater pushback on a franchise when they're being perceived to make the Lakers better, especially if you might be a member of the Western Conference, a potential contender, somebody who is competing for a playoff, whatever it might be. If you're perceived as a team that is doing the Lakers work for them, making them better, then you're helping the evil empire and all that other kinds of stuff. So I do think there is some level of validity to the idea of a Lakers tax. I just don't think
this
it
is nothing
operates.
new. I'm just saying this.
Right. I'm just saying, I don't think it operates in quite the way oftentimes people perceive it to be. But there is some truth to it.
I just feel like everyone's anger is misplaced. All other 28 teams around the league, you'd have done the exact same thing. Like, again, you're punishing the wrong party. Like, if you feel like the Lakers
here's the thing. I think you can do what you're talking about here. The strategy you're talking about is doable in both ways. You can walk and chew gum. What you should be doing, I guess, is trying to punish the Lakers and then fleece the Mavericks. So you can do theoretically both. Like, you can try to steal AD while also not making it easy for Rob Pelinka to improve. I think as long as the idea that GMs will just be a little more sensitive to the idea of like, wait a minute, what's this going to look like? Are we going to look like we're doing something stupid in the media? Or we look like we're going to get screwed?
Are we going to get backlash from our fans? We're going to become Nico Light. We're going to become Nico 2.0.
As long as the answer to that is no, then I think the Lakers can make whatever trade they need, because teams ultimately serve their self-interests. And if 28 teams decided that they didn't want to deal with the Lakers because we're going to show them they got so lucky with the Luka, the 29th would be like, sweet, market inefficiency. I'm going to go get myself a Laker, that's going to help me. And that's how this would work.
But an example of this, for example, we were talking about Daniel Gafford from Jovan Buha's podcast. I believe it's from the podcast as opposed to something he wrote for The Athletic, but definitely from Jovan, friend of the show. Quote, my read talking about a Gafford deal is they'd have to overpay. It would probably have to be something like Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and a first-round pick for Gafford, and that's a lot. And for what it's worth, I agree with Jovan's assessment. That is a lot. And it's important to remember with Daniel Gafford, you have to really like him to make a deal like that. A, because that's the price to get him. And that price, I think, is high for Daniel Gafford. But also, too, there's then the price to keep him, because he's going to have a lot of leverage in that scenario. If you're not aware, Daniel Gafford is in the final year of his deal. It's 14 and change for the 25-26 season. And the Lakers are not going to trade that much to rent Daniel Gafford, if for no other reason than they are not, at least I need to see more to be convinced that they are Daniel Gafford away from winning a championship. So that's too high of a cost for a theoretical one season with Daniel Gafford. So then you got to start thinking about, are we comfortable paying close to 20 mil, 20 plus for Daniel Gafford? Like, that could be what he's looking for. And in a situation like this, it might be what he's able to extract from the Lakers in order to justify making this deal in the first place. And Gafford has never really solidified himself as a full-time starter in the league. He's good. Don't get me
wrong. He's a good player. He's a good player. But I'm always a little bit suspicious. And I think you have to be a little bit suspicious of players who kind of put up impressive numbers and seem to be like really good per minute players and all these other things to and don't quite get past that hump. Like, look, Derek Lively is a really good player. And so it's like, to the idea that Gafford just had to split time with Lively and all these other, it's like, it doesn't totally sort of impugn his character. And as a player, and there is a limit as to the type of center the Lakers are going to be able to get. But I want to ask next about this question of overpayment. Like, the Lakers have some really strong needs. Are they in a position where they might actually need to, not, it's like the league is making them, but in an effort to get better? Is it possible that it would be in their best interests, perhaps, to overpay? So that's my question next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where'd all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money, it's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you can stop just managing money and you can start building wealth. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. And managing your money with a partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year.
So I never like to be this guy. I put out the proverbial hypothetical. So we'll get to it, and I'll give my opinion on it as well. But like, the Lakers desperately need a center. In this hypothetical thing, you're giving up Knecht and a first rounder. The Vincent piece of it is less important, other than when you use Vincent in one deal, you can't use Vincent in another,
and you need to find somebody to play back the point guard.
Right. The CBA this isn't even an anti-Lakers thing. You're just not allowed to trade the same player twice. So, how much of an overpay? I think in this particular case, Knecht and a first rounder, and that balancing salary is a lot for a guy you're going to have to pay, especially. But how much of an overpay do you think is reasonable for the Lakers, given the extreme need that they have at this particular position, the scarcity of players available, and the sort of limitations in the amount of stuff that they have to offer? It's not like, Oklahoma City, Andy, could overpay easily for a player if they wanted to, with a little extra pick or something, if they really wanted that guy. The Lakers obviously don't have that much capital.
I mean, I think in some ways the answer is what else, or who else I should say, are you going to be potentially bidding for, trying to trade for, maybe getting with your taxpayer mid-level exception, like all of those things. Because while center is the most glaring positional need that the Lakers have, they quite literally have no full-time NBA players under center. I mean, under contract. Like Jackson Hayes is a free agent. Trey Jemison is under contract with a two-way, but he's not a full-time NBA player. Like they have literally nobody. So in terms of positions, that's the most glaring. But they have other needs as well. Like we've talked about, they need better two-way wings. They need better defense along the wings. Like they could use an upgrade. When we were talking about the Chris Paul rumor, which, side note, it's pretty clear the Locked On Lakers audience, not a fan of the Chris Paul acquisition theoretically, which neither one of us really pushed for that hard either. Like one of the main things
it's like, I need to know who else, just for recap, people who didn't see the show on Friday. I am actually not. Chris Paul played pretty well for the Spurs last year, and the chances are that on a sort of per minute basis, he's probably going to be better than most minimum salaried point guards you're going to find. What I need to know is, who else are you signing? Because obviously a 40-year-old Chris Paul, who has never been, a high flying, Allen Iverson waterbug athlete, like that. Even in his prime, he was a different kind of player than that. That guy is not going to solve the Lakers' problems of athleticism and defense. So, what else are you doing around it? Like, the parts really need to fit together. So that's I don't object to Chris Paul. I sort of object to not enough information given.
Well, I mean, really, there's not enough information.
I'm just sort of more recapping
I get that. What I was going to say is, just during the show itself, the one of the points I raised is that I would even consider Chris Paul, depending on the other details, the context, all of that, potentially a good acquisition or a reasonable acquisition. In a lot of ways, says more about the need for an upgrade over Gabe Vincent than truly endorsing Chris Paul. But the point in even bringing this up at all is there's a lot of different areas that the Lakers are going to try to strengthen, and they have very few means. So some of the idea of how much are you willing to overpay depends on who. And then a lot of the details, like, for example, Nick Claxton has been linked to the Lakers, will continue to be linked to the Lakers until either he's traded somewhere else or the Lakers get a different center. Nick Claxton could end up presented the same way to the Lakers. It could be, we saw what you were willing to pay for Mark Williams. We know that you need a center. Therefore, it's going to be a potential overpay if you want to get Nick Claxton. That's what the Lakers would hear from the Nets. But if that was the case, I might theoretically at least favor getting Claxton, because at the very least, I would overpay him. I would overpay for him only once because he's under contract for a few years, as opposed to someone like Daniel Gafford, who you may end up overpaying to get him. Then you end up having to overpay to keep him.
Right,
at least
you're
with somebody
kind of
like,
over a barrel at that point. You've just given up all this stuff, and then to let him walk, you basically traded him for a year.
Well, that was one of the concerns I think the Lakers had with Mark Williams once they saw his medicals, was like, okay, we're giving up a steep price to get Mark Williams, and in theory that's fine, but we have to re-sign him soon to big money, and clearly what was in these medicals scared the Lakers. With someone like Claxton, if nothing else, the overpay happens only once. So I think that matters.
And I think of the two, Claxton has been more of a proven entity as a starting center.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, Gafford is, again, he's one of those guys, and we'll get Nick Angstadt on, from Locked On Mavs to talk about this at some point as, we get a little closer to the Mavs. I mean, I tell you what, Nick knows how to pull some strings. He's got this whole Jason Kidd thing to support him. So that's good for business. But I am always suspicious of players who seem to put up great fantasy numbers, especially at a position that is relatively thin around the league. He has, I think, the biggest issue in my watching of his and viewing is defensively. He's a good rim protector, but center defense and defense in the NBA now is not just about your ability to protect the rim. There's so much more that goes into it as a defender in terms of the instincts. This is where an Anthony Davis was so impressive. You have to have those instincts of where to be and read a play and call it out. Like your center, especially if you really are kind of trying to keep him as a rim protector, keep him close to the basket, whatever it might be. He's your signal caller. He's telling everybody where to be. He's calling out things. He's seeing that you need that level of understanding and defensive acumen, if at all possible, from a center. And I'm not comparing him to Claxton because we're going to need to do some of those previews as well. But my impression of Gafford is that he's always been a little bit short in that regard. He's good at the counting stats aspects of defense and has some times when he's dominant, but he's got holes in his game.
And look, some of this could also be dictated by let's say the Lakers don't like any of their options at center for trade. They have to think about, okay, who is potentially gettable with the taxpayer mid-level, whether, I don't know, Brook Lopez or Steven Adams or, someone like that. You have to think about, does that strike you as somebody good enough to be a starting center playing anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes? At that point, do you need to re-sign Jackson Hayes? There's all, and if you don't like those answers, then you may feel like, we have to bite the bullet and overpay to trade for center X because we need a center. And even if we don't love the idea of committing to any of these guys, we also want to be good enough to, really compete this coming season. We're not going to be able to do it with any center available for $6 million or less.
Yeah, this is where the asset issue is. Let me rephrase. This is a place where the asset issue really is problematic, because you would want the Lakers, if at all possible, to, if not, not going all in necessarily, like doing crazy stuff, but have the capacity to be aggressive. The Dodgers have done this before, where they don't necessarily, they're really good actually at not overpaying for stuff But if they want something and they think it's something that
I think they've fallen into a little bit of an overpay habit over this last season or so, but that's a side conversation for Locked On Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it does fit better over there. Like, they're willing to throw money at stuff, but in terms of like if there's a trade that they want to make, and like they don't usually let a player, somebody, if they identify the talent that they want, it's like, but part of the reason they can do that is they can spend essentially unlimited amounts of money, but also too, they've done a great job constantly replenishing. For all the trades they've made, they always seem to have 3 or 4 or 5 guys that are really well regarded around the league and are sought after. The Lakers have Dalton Knecht and Bronny basically as your 2 young draft prospects. Like, that's not.
And while we don't know this for sure, I raised this point a couple weeks ago when I came up with my fake 3-way trade with the Lakers, Rockets, and Nets, trying to illustrate what I thought would be the most realistic, radical trade the Lakers could make to just completely reconfigure the roster, try to balance it more on both sides of the ball. One of the things that I noticed while trying to balance the math is that if you believe Bronny is never going to get traded as long as LeBron's still on this team, and so it's clear, I don't know that that's a fact, but I know it is a very commonly held belief, then for all intents and purposes, Bronny doesn't even factor into this, at least for the time being, as far as
and for
somebody
that ways. It's not just that the Lakers may not trade him. It's that you're losing it on both ends. You're losing it on, do teams really want him? And this isn't a knock on. There aren't a lot of teams around who are clamoring for anybody's 55th pick.
Look, forget whether they like Bronny.
I'm saying, but this is my point: is like, you're not only you're 2 young prospects. You have Dalton Knecht, and then the other one is a player that probably doesn't have a lot of value. And even if you did want to just take the contract off of off the Lakers' hands, the Lakers may not trade him anyway because he's LeBron's son.
So there's $2 million.
My point is it's on both sides of it. So
you have that $2 million that you can't add into a theoretical deal, which makes it even more complicated.
So speaking of LeBron, we got an interesting mailbag question there, and there's also some interesting reporting about Giannis that will impact the Lakers. Get to all of it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's the playoffs. That means big performances, even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. Just now the finals. You got to get on this now. It's called They Swoosh. You save anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game. SGA is really trying hard. Dash Pass members receive a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. It's crispy, it tastes awesome, and it's totally free. The offer is valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. And have you ever looked at your deliveries and fees and thought there's got to be a better way? Well, you were right this whole time. With Dash Pass, you get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one. And think how much you would save over an entire season. So sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. Any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members get a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 plus order and the code Wingstop. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply.
So reports from a few different spots are that Giannis, Andy, is leaning towards staying in Milwaukee, at least for the time being, or at the very least not demanding a trade, which I guess is basically the same thing, because I just don't see the Bucks trading Giannis without Giannis saying trade me. Even though all the arguments, they'd be better off this aside, they're not doing it unless Giannis asks them to.
He's the greatest player in franchise history, and he's still playing at a top 5 level. I mean, I guess other than maybe Kareem, but the difference, if you want to split hairs between Giannis and Kareem, Giannis still has the chance to be a lifer, where Kareem by definition wasn't.
This does not impact the Lakers in the sense that it takes them out of the Giannis sweepstakes. They were never in the Giannis sweepstakes. But what it does is, let's say Giannis does not get traded this offseason. That was a potentially one, like, to make this work. Eric Pincus, for example, at Bleacher Report, put together a gigantic 14 player trade, like a hypothetical Giannis deal. The Lakers were involved in it, in this hypothetical trade. They didn't get Giannis, but they used it to fill their center need with Jakob Poeltl, and then picked up I think an upgrade, all health issues set aside, an upgrade in pure player with Lonzo Ball over Gabe Vincent. And so you trade away a bunch, Knecht and Vanderbilt and Shake Milton and a pick and some swaps and Gabe Vincent, and some stuff goes out the door, and you end up with Poeltl and
actually
and
most
Lonzo.
of the picks and the swaps.
Sure, most
and all
of the picks
stuff
were not coming from the Lakers.
Right. The Lakers actually, assuming I read this correctly from Eric, they give up Knecht, Shake Milton, Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, and they receive Lonzo and Jakob.
I think there's at least a second rounder and a swap, but it doesn't. I mean, that part is whether that's a good trade, bad trade. Probably doesn't happen if Giannis obviously doesn't get traded. And the point here is, this is the type of thing that the Lakers, again, with limited assets, like action like this, where teams need other teams to be involved to do complex things, where there's a team at the end of it who really wants something to happen. Like, we've got a chance to trade for Giannis, and man, this is getting inside, but we're not going to, it's like the Lakers with AD. Like, would we have wanted to hold on to Josh Hart? Sure. But, like, are you going to keep that from making the deal happen? And so the Lakers can get involved perhaps in a deal like that and be one of the teams that helps facilitate. Maybe you get a little better player back than you could in a normal trade with a, one-on-one with a different team. If a trade like this isn't a choice because Giannis doesn't go anywhere, it's kind of just one less thing for the Lakers to be involved in.
I'll make it even a simpler scenario. If Giannis stays in Milwaukee, my guess is Brook Lopez will end up being retained in Milwaukee because he knows the system. He knows playing with Giannis. He is a part of that core. He's done very well there. And if they are staying in win now mode, they may need more centers, but Brook Lopez makes sense for that scenario. If they are trading Giannis for pieces that will help them rebuild, then 37, 38, however old he is, Brook Lopez makes no sense for the Bucks, and therefore he could be available for the Lakers. I would be very surprised if Giannis stays in Milwaukee and Brook Lopez leaves, short of a very big offer that would equally surprise me. So that takes potentially at least a center that might have been gettable for a taxpayer mid-level off the board.
The ripple effect for stuff around the league, these little things. I mean, Giannis taking himself out of the trade market is not a little thing. That's a big thing. But there are things, big and little, that you just don't necessarily automatically see tied to the Lakers that impact them. Like, if this is going to, I still going to need to see it. I'm going to need to see that this is going to be this gigantic, super busy offseason that everybody has been talking about and everybody's anticipating. I think it's possible. It's certainly possible. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody has completely figured out how this new CBA is going to do stuff. It could be bonkers. I could see Chicago doing Boston doing all kinds of crazy stuff to just give themselves essentially a gap year in the Tatum thing, reset their clock, and be ready to go when he's kind of full strength. I could also see them doing almost nothing, and just sort of playing it relatively safe. I could see, there's just so much that could happen. But sometimes we're waiting for it and it's nothing. It's the meme with the guy poking the NBA in this case saying, do something.
I mean, Rob Pelinka, if nothing else, thinks it's going to be super active. And I found it very interesting that he really put himself out there with the activity that he predicted, saying, we will be in the middle of it. Like, that was potentially putting himself on the hook to overpromise and underdeliver. And that's not really Rob's style, certainly not as boldly and specifically. So the general consensus seems to be it's going to be a whirlwind. We shall see. But if nothing else, teams are starting to understand the CBA better, even if they haven't completely mastered it. They're getting it better. Like,
I think I agree with that. I think what I'm more getting at is this idea of it's not sort of, it's like, how do we react to it? What are the things that we need to, what kinds of players do we need to jettison? What kind of teams do we have to build? What are the things that we value? Do we have too many, are we looking ahead? Like, are we going to look ahead 1 or 2 or 3 years now for guys that are in a position that we think we might have to sign them, that we just don't want to give that not necessarily max contract to, but that next level contract, the one that Austin Reeves is going to be looking for, or things like that? Or do we have aging, guys that, geez, man, we got one really good player, like a star caliber player, but we're just not quite there. Domantas Sabonis, I'm just making up a name. Where you look at the Kings, like, you got a guy like Domantas Sabonis, very good player. Are the Kings going to be good enough to utilize Sabonis in a way that really matters over the next, I'm just going to make up a number again, 2 or 3 years? His contract is up. Do you start to move guys before you have to sign them in their early 30s under this CBA? There's just all kinds of wrinkles, and different GMs are going to play it differently. I think in 4 or 5 years, if we're still working under this structure, we'll have a better idea and what the new cost layers are in the NBA. I just don't think we know them yet. So
again,
but I hope it's a lot, because activity, I still believe activity very much benefits the Lakers.
Yep, absolutely.
Could be wrong. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers. We'll get to these mailbag questions tomorrow about LeBron. We got some other ones to get into. Keep sending them to here on the YouTube page. If that's how you leave questions, leave comments. You can also send them to Cam Brothers on Twitter @Cam Brothers. We'll see everyone tomorrow.